Wandami Bante and Sialis. Good morning, everyone, and good evening to our Dhamma friends in the Western Hemisphere. Welcome to Lesson 23 on Association of Mental Factors, Part 2. I am Cynthia, the meeting co-host, and will be helping Bante and everyone in today's session. May we invite Bante to start the teaching, please. Sādhu, Sādhu, Sādhu.
Okay, good morning, and thank you, Cynthia. Let's start our today's lesson by paying homage to the Buddha. Let's recite Namo Tassa 3 times together. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Okay, very good to see you here for lesson 23. We have studied about the association of mental factors. As we have finished the part 1, and this is part 2. So in lesson 22, we mentioned that how it is called the association of mental factors by Venerable Sayadaw U Silananda. That is Chittasika Chitta combination, or Chittasika Chitta combination. So based on the mental factors, we find the consciousness. So for this classification, we follow the order of the mental factors, mental factor classification. Thus, in part 1, we have finished about the Anyasamana Chittasika, the ethically variable mental factors, and how many consciousness can associate with the respective mental factors. Then unwholesome mental factors. As we have divided 52 mental factors into 3 groups, Anyasamana group and Akusala group. Then the last one, Sobhana group. So today's in lesson 23, we are going to study the association of beautiful mental factors. So for the 25 beautiful mental factors, there are 4 neya, or 4 ways of associations. As we have divided in the Chittasika study, the first group, Sobhana Saradana, 19, and second group, Virati Chittasika, the abstinence 3, Samma Vaca, Samma Kamanda, and Samma Ajiva. Then the third group, Apamanya Chittasikas, 2 illimitables. First one is confession, Karuna, and second one is a sympathetic choice, that is Mudita. Then the fourth group, it is only one, the single one, Panyendriya Chittasika, the wisdom faculty. So according to this division, the 4 ways of association also will come. Then that's the first one is the Sobhana Saradana Chittasika. They occurs in beautiful consciousness, only beautiful consciousness. These 19 mental factors will not arise with non-beautiful consciousness Those are unwholesome 12 and rootless 18. 19 mental factors will not arise. These 30 non-beautiful consciousness. They will arise with only beautiful consciousness, 59 in 89, or 91 in 121. They all are beautiful consciousness. The reason why these class of consciousness are regarded as these beautiful is they arise with these mental factors, beautiful mental factors. Then for the second group, this is second way. 3 Viruddhi mental factors, Viruddhi Cetasika, they occurs in 8 wholesome sense pure mundane. These are we call the great wholesome. Among the 24 sense pure beautiful consciousness, the wholesome consciousness 8. So 3 abstraneous mental factors can arise with 8 wholesome sense pure consciousness. Then they also can arise with 8 supramundane consciousness. Then Abhidhamma Cetasika, the 2 illimitable, they can occur in 28. So great wholesome is the same as the Viruddhi. Then great functional, this is the Isra, then the Viruddhi Cetasika. The 8 functional sense pure, then 12 sublime consciousness. So here you see the abstraneous mental factors, they don't arise with the sublime consciousness, but the Abhidhamma Cetasika, illimitables 2, can arise with sublime consciousness. But the abstraneous 3 can arise supramundane consciousness, but the Abhidhamma, the illimitable, they cannot arise with supramundane consciousness. Then the last one, Pannadhikalankara Cetasika, and the wisdom faculty. It can occur in 47 consciousness associated with knowledge. So because the panya and knowledge, jnana, knowledge is jnana. And so panya and jnana, they are the same. So the panyendriya, the wisdom faculty, arise with the consciousness, 47 consciousness associated with knowledge. Then when we study the Chitta chapter, we know already what are the consciousness associated with knowledge. So 12 in sense pure, and altogether sublime and lokuttara, supramundane 35. So in this way, we can count 47 easily. Okay, this is the brief study about the 4 ways of association of beautiful mental factors. Then let's continue. So for the large, the 19 beautiful mental factors, these are 7 in single and 12 in the pairs, 6 pairs. So these 19 arise with the beautiful consciousness. This is clear for the first way, and we will focus on the others. This second way, we need to focus on the Viruddhi Cetasika. So Samma Vaca, Samma Kammanta, Samma Ajiva. How they arise? We already know they arise with 16 consciousness. So the absent will be 73 consciousness. The abstraneous mental factors cannot arise with 73. So the 73 except 16. So unwholesome, rootless, all. So 13. And so unwholesome, rootless. Because they are non-beautiful. The viridities, the abstinence are beautiful. They have different nature. They cannot arise together. Then in the sense-pure beautiful consciousness. So here, only wholesome consciousness are included under the associated consciousness. So among the 24 sense-pure beautiful consciousness, the 16 will be dissociated consciousness. So the sense-pure resultants and sense-pure functional, altogether 16. So among the 54 sense-pure consciousness, we get the 46, they cannot arise with the abstinence. And here 5 material sphere, immaterial sphere, because all the sublime consciousness cannot arise with viridity. So these are the 70 dissociated consciousness. 73 dissociated consciousness. So let's talk about the abstinence manifestos. So when they arise, the right speech or right action or right livelihood, when they arise taking the object of transgression. So for example, if one is abstaining from the wrongdoing of killing, this is included in the bodily action. So when he deliberately abstains, the wholesome consciousness arises. At the moment, that wholesome consciousness and the associated manifestos takes the object of transgression to abstain, so not killing, so the object. That's why the viridity, whenever they arise, they take the object of transgression. And then keeping this information, we will continue. Now, what types of consciousness can arise with abstinence manifestos, and what types of consciousness cannot arise with the abstinence manifestos? So here, 3 abstinence manifestos cannot occur in resultant sense-pure citta. So it is clear for the non-beautiful that 2 consciousness are non-beautiful and viridity are beautiful. So they have different nature. It is, we don't need to talk about that. It is very obvious. Then for this sense-pure beautiful, 16 sense-pure beautiful, so resultant 8 and functional 8. So for the resultant consciousness, even though they are beautiful consciousness, the abstinence cannot arise with the resultant sense-pure consciousness. Why? The resultant consciousness do not exercise the function of restlessness because they are just the result of wholesome. Even they themselves, as a result, not very powerful because they are not active as a chemically point of view. Only the wholesome, unwholesome are active from the chemically point of view. That's why the resultant consciousness, being the result of the wholesome consciousness, they cannot exercise the function of restraints. That is why the abstinence consciousness, abstinence manifestos cannot arise with resultant sense-pure consciousness. Then secondly, they cannot arise with the great functional consciousness too. So Mahakiriya. Then because they arise, the great functional consciousness arise in the Arhat's mental process. And also the Arhats already overcome the disposition towards transgression. So no reason to transgress, to violate. That is why no reason to abstain. So Araha does not need to have the intentionally abstaining, because abstaining from wrongdoing is already in their nature. Already in their nature. That is why they don't need to make the deliberately abstaining. So the abstinence mental factors cannot arise with the great functional consciousness. 2. Then they cannot arise with the sublime consciousness. Here, 27 sublime consciousness, they cannot arise. What is the reason? The reason is the Vedati and sublime consciousness have the different objects. So here, the abstaining mental factors take the object of transgression, and the sublime consciousness take the object of counterpart sign. So all the sublime consciousness are jhana. In the jhana level, the consciousness take the counterpart sign as its object, and sometimes it takes the consciousness itself, consciousness, reality of consciousness, mahakata. But most of them, they are taking the counterpart sign as their object. That is why the abstaining mental factors and sublime consciousness, they have the different objects. So according to the nature of consciousness, the consciousness can take a single object at one time. That is why if they have the different objects, they cannot arise at the same time. So here, these are 3 groups. We need to make a note. The group of consciousness, the abstinence mental factors cannot arise together. Okay, so more about the abstinence mental factors, the different nature of Vedati. So they have different nature in mundane and supramundane level. So here in mundane level, so mundane lokiya abstinence, they can occur only in the sense pure wholesome, as just mentioned in the previous slide. They cannot arise with the resultant consciousness, and also they cannot arise with the functional consciousness. They can arise only with the wholesome sense pure in the mundane. So when they arise, also they don't arise always whenever the wholesome consciousness arises. We cannot say that the Vedati arise together. So when a person deliberately, intentionally abstains from bodily wrong action, so at that moment, so then bodily wrong action, it does not relate to the livelihood. So at that moment in his mental process, the great wholesome consciousness arises for the ordinary person and trainees. as the arahat, in the process of arahat, only the functional consciousness arises. So when the ordinary person and trainees deliberately abstain from bodily wrong action, at the moment, the sincere wholesome consciousness, or in other name, the great functional consciousness, one of the great functional consciousness arises in his mental process at that moment. So in that mental process, in that consciousness, the mental factors will be associated. So at that moment, the samma kammanta, the right action, is present in his mind, but the other right speech and right livelihood will be absent. In the same way, when a person deliberately abstain from a verbal wrong action, such as refraining from musawada, etc., which is not related to livelihood, one of the great wholesome consciousness will arise in his mental process. At that moment, the abstinence, that is the right speech, the mental factors of right speech, samma vaca, will be present, and the other two, samma kammanta and samma ajiva, will be absent. Then, when the person abstains from any of the 7 wrongdoings related to livelihood, then in the mental process, same types, the great wholesome consciousness, one of them arise. Then the right livelihood, the mental factors of right livelihood among the 3 abstinence will arise, will be present, and the other 2, the right action and right speech, will be absent. So in one time, they can arise. So only one of the 3 virati can arise at one particular moment. So in the mundane level, they are mutually exclusive. They arise separately. And when someone, the ordinary person of training, when a person performs the meritorious deeds not related to any abstinence, like a performing the donation or meditation, like this, at that moment, none of the 3 abstinence will be present. All of them will be absent. So they arise sometimes with the wholesome consciousness, and they don't arise with the wholesome consciousness. So it means when the wholesome consciousness arises in the process, sometimes the abstinence arise together, one of them, and sometimes all absent. So only the other mental factors accompany. So that is why they are called karaji. They arise on occasions. And when they arise together with the wholesome consciousness, also they cannot arise all 3 together. Only one of them can arise, and the other 2 will be absent in the mundane level. This is the nature of virati in mundane level. Then they have the different nature in supramundane level. In the supramundane level, they are necessarily present. So they must be present at the moment of supramundane consciousness, omega or phala. When the supramundane consciousness the Noble Eightfold Path must be present. All the mental factors of Noble Eightfold Path must be present. So among the Noble Eightfold Path, there are 3 factors related to the moral precept. They are 3 virati: Samma Vacha, Samma Kammanta, Samma Ajiva. That is why they cannot be absent in the supramundane consciousness. That's why they are called niyata in Pali. So they will be present whenever the supramundane consciousness arises. This is different from the mundane consciousness, mundane wholesome consciousness. Then when they arise, also they will arise together. So they arise always and together. So niyata and ikato. That's why the abstinence mental factors in mundane level are nana and garaji. So nana separately, garaji sometime. Then in the supramundane level, they are niyata and ikato. Niyata means they always arise, and ikato means they arise together. This is the different nature of virati in mundane level and supramundane level. So we need to keep this information in our mind, otherwise we will misunderstand in other level of our Abhidhamma study. Then for the next group, the Abhamanya, illimitable, the Karuna, compassion, and Mudita, appreciated joy. So they occur in 22 citta, already studied. So as they occur with the 28 consciousness, and they cannot arise with 61. So among the 89 consciousness, so we need to identify in all mental factors what consciousness are associated and what are dissociated consciousness. And so here, then for the 61, we can easily count based on the order of the consciousness. So it is sure the 30 non-beautiful consciousness. And here the exception is only the resultant 8. So 8 resultants. Then here, up to the 4th jhana, so all 4 jhana arise together with the illimitable. That's why the only 5th jhana exception. So 5th jhana, 23. Then, and Lokuttara, supramundane consciousness. In this way, we can count the 61 consciousness, dissociated consciousness easily. So according to the nature, so based on the nature of the virati cittasika, then here, the Abhamanya cittasika, they don't arise with supramundane consciousness. We need to consider only one type. They will not be different in the level of mundane and supramundane. So here, the nature of Abhamanya, the nature of illimitable. So they arise at times variably, so they cannot arise together too. That's why they separately nana. And also they arise on occasion. That's why garaji. So same as the mundane level of virati, they have that same nature. So when the karuna arise, the mudita cannot arise because they have the different objects. So the compassion arises only when the person's mind commiserates with those in suffering. So focusing on the beings with suffering, the compassion arises. That is why the object of compassion is the beings with suffering, the beings in suffering. And only when the rejoicing, a person rejoices in the fortune of others, the appreciated joy, mudita, arise. That is why the object of appreciated joy, mudita, is the beings in the fortune, or the being with pleasing in happiness. That is why they have the different nature according to the object, different objects. That is why they cannot arise together. When the compassion arises, appreciated joy cannot arise. When the appreciated joy arises, compassion cannot arise. They cannot arise at the same time, at the same moment. That's why they are also regarded as the Nana and Karaji. Then, okay, here, for the sublime consciousness, only 4 jhana can arise with the Karuna and Mudita. But the 5th jhana cannot arise with the Karuna and Mudita. So what is the reason? At the level of the jhana, here the Karuna and Mudita, they are necessarily connected to joyful mental feelings, so somanasa. So the Karuna and Mudita always arise with the somanasa in the level of jhana. But in the sense-pure level, they can arise with the equanimity mental feelings too, according to this explanation. So in the jhana level, they need the support of the somanasa, the joyful mental feeling. Then all the 5th jhana are accompanied by the neutral feeling, so equanimity. They have the different nature according to the feeling. So Karuna, Mudita needs the support of the somanasa at the jhana level. But the 5th jhana have the equanimity feelings, the feeling of equanimity. That is why they are not matched each other. So the 2 mental factors of illimitables cannot arise with the 5th jhana. But in the Abhidhamma Sangaha, you will see another sentence. It mentioned about the Kechi. So Kechis are some teachers, according to the Pali. Some teachers they say the compassion and appreciated joy, the 2 illimitable, cannot arise in the types of consciousness accompanied by equanimity. So according to them, in the level of sense-pure consciousness also, they cannot arise. So according to their understanding, so we have to remove the equanimity from 4 equanimity from great wholesome, and 4 equanimity here from the great functional. So only 20, according to the KG, some teacher. So for their view is not taken in the Abhidhamma Sangaha, but Abhidhamma Sangaha, the Venerable Anuruddha, mentioned about their views. So they also say in that way, but we keep, but only in the level of jhana, the compassion and appreciated joy, 2 illimitable, needs the support of joyful mental feelings. They don't need that support from the joyful mental feeling in the sense-pure consciousness, sense-pure level. So this is the different views of the Abhidhamma Sangaha and the other teacher. So according to other teacher, we need to know only 20 consciousness can arise with the illimitable mental factors. This is about the Abhidhamma English. So we need to know the karuna with the great wholesome. When unwholesome consciousness arises, we can understand there is no compassion in that moment, in that mind, at the precise moments. And also, when we see at the precise moment of seeing, the moment of seeing is included under the rootless consciousness, rootless types. That is why that is non-beautiful. There is no compassion at that moment. So in this way, we can understand what mental factors accompany to which types of consciousness. Then we can apply it into our daily life. So we can identify this mental factor is present at that moment. This mental factor is absent at that moment. Then the last group, the last one is Pannadhikalankara Citasika, the wisdom faculty. So that is same as the non-delusion and knowledge, jnana, etc. So 47 consciousness, as the Panya wisdom faculty arises with the 47 consciousness. So there are 42 dissociated consciousness among the 89. Then what are the 47? So here, sense, pure, beautiful, 12. So all associated with knowledge in the 24 sense, pure, beautiful consciousness. So here in the sense pure level, we get only 12, and all the 5 material pure, immaterial pure, and supramundane, altogether 47. But whenever they arise, the wisdom faculty arise together. Then what are the dissociated consciousness? Here, unwholesome, rootless, and 12 sense pure, beautiful, dissociated from knowledge. Altogether, 42 consciousness are dissociated. Then, so we finish the association of beautiful mental factors in 4 ways. So we will continue about fixed and unfixed agents. So they are Niyata Yogi Citasika and Aniyata Yogi Citasika. Among the 52 mental factors, some are fixed agents. They fixed. Whenever the respective consciousness arises related to them, they arise together. They must arise together. They cannot be absent. They are fixed agents, mental factors. And some mental factors, they are unfixed agents, mental factors. They sometimes arise together, sometimes absent. They are not fixed. They are unfixed mental factors, 11. So what are the 11 unfixed mental factors? So they call the Aniyata. So Aniyata Yogi and Niyata Yogi. See here, 11 mental factors are Aniyata because they do not necessarily arise in the types of consciousness to which they are aligned. So sometimes they arise, sometimes they don't arise. Okay, let's see. Among the unwholesome mental factors, so envy, issa, avarice, matsuriya, and worry, kukucha. 3. So these 3, we will see how they becomes unfixed. So here in this slide, we are going to count only the enumeration. 3 and 3 virati, abstract and 3 also, just mentioned, they are not necessarily arise. Sometimes they absent, but still the wholesome consciousness arise. Then two illimitable. Then conceit mana. So maybe you may remember the conceit mana arise with the four grid-rooted consciousness. For grid-rooted consciousness, which is not associated with round view, dissociated from round view. Then sloth and torpor, they also arise in the unwholesome, five unwholesome consciousness. They are prompt, tinamita. So these are 11 unfixed adjustment factors. They arise, sometimes they arise with the respective consciousness, and sometimes they absent. That is why they are unfixed. And for the Niyata Yogi, fixed adjustment factors 41. So the remaining, except the 11, the other 41 consciousness, 41 mental factors, they are fixed adjustments because they invariably arise in their assigned types of consciousness. So, for example, Sādhu. Sādhu is one of the beautiful universal. Sobhana Sararana. That is why Sobhana Sararana arise according to the nature. Sobhana Sararana 19 arise with the beautiful consciousness. So you may consider all the beautiful consciousness, including the vipaka, resultants. So great resultants that arise at the moment of you are sleeping. So according to the nature, the mental factors of Sādhu must be accompanied at the moment, must be present at the moment of resultants, even the resultant consciousness, because they invariably arise in the respective consciousness. So we can note 11s are unfixed and 41 are fixed. This is the classification according to the Abhidhamma Sangaha. Then, okay, let's see the mood of unfixed adjustment factors. They do not necessarily arise as they are aniyata. So how they arise? They arise occasionally, on occasion. So when, as I mentioned in the virati, in case of virati, when it needs the function of the mental factors, they will be present. And it does not need, at the moment of making donation, we don't need to make the abstinence at the moment. Deliberately abstinence is not necessary at the moment. So virati are absent. When we abstain from any wrongdoings, it needs the function of abstinence. That is why the abstinence mental factors are present. So among the 11 niyata, aniyata, unfixed, so sometimes they arise separately, like abstinence, virati, and abhamanya, like this. They arise separately, mutually exclusive. Then sometimes they arise in combination. So we will see which one of them arise together and arise separately. Then here, the 8 mental factors. So 3 is sa, machariya, kukusa, kukucha. Then in the mundane level, mundane, virati, 3. But here, in the supramundane level, they cannot arise separately. They cannot arise occasionally. They must arise together and always. That's why here we have to make sure in the mundane level of abstinence, the lokiya virati 3. then 2 illimitable. These 8 mental factors are called Nana and Karachi. They arise separately. So when the envy arises, the Maitreya and Kukucha cannot arise because they arise. They are counted in the mental factors which are associated with the dosa mula, hatred-rooted consciousness. Although they arise in the same types of consciousness, they cannot arise together. And also they cannot arise always. When a person only gets angry, not focusing on others' property, not focusing on one's own property, not focusing on one is omission and dismission and omission of good and bad. So just get angry. At that moment, all of them, Isa, Maitreya, Kukucha, are absent. Only the anger arise. And anger and other mental factors of the moha, ahirika, anuttapa, like this. Then when one get angry, focusing on others' property, at that moment, only the envy is present and the other two absent. So because they arise separately. And this is occasion for the Isa to arise. That's why the Isa follow. In another moment, when get angry, focusing on one's own property, so avarice arise, and the other two, envy and worry, absent. When one is regretting, so at that moment, the kukucha arise, but the other two absent. So they arise separately and they arise occasionally. Then in the mundane level, the abstraneous mental factors are arising separately and occasionally. We already mentioned and about the illimitable too. And when one focus on the beings with suffering and develop the compassion, at that moment only the compassion arises and not appreciated joy. So in another moment, one focusing on the beings with the pleasant in happiness. At that moment, only the appreciated joy can arise. And when one is doing just the other types of meritorious deeds, not focusing on the beings, not developing the compassion and appreciated joy. In other times, the illimitables, two of them are absent. That is why they arise separately and they arise on occasion. Then mana, for the mana consists, because it is only one types, only one factors. That is why we cannot say separately, but we can say only occasionally. Because the mana arise with the four greed-rooted consciousness dissociated from wrong view. It is not necessarily arise, the mana, whenever these four types of consciousness arise. That is why the mana is arising occasionally. When someone has the nature of the conceit or pride, at that moment, the mental factors of conceit will be present. In other time, that will be absent. That is why that is Karachi. So Nana Karachi, 8, Karachi, 1. Then sloth and torpor, Tinamita. So they are arising together because sloth is the sluggishness of the mental factors, and torpors of the consciousness and mental factor they are. So they cannot be divided each other. That is why they are arising in combination, not separately. They are arising in combination, saha. But still they are arising in occasional. So garaji, occasionally. So saha garaji. Among the 11 unfixed adjustment factors, we can divide this into 3 groups. Nana garaji, 8. According to their nature, they arise separately and they arise occasionally. And Karachi, only the Karachi, the occasionally, 1. And Saha Karachi, 2. So in this way, we can understand the mental factors. And these are more information about the mental factors. So now we finish our study in the association of mental factors according to the Venerable Bhikkhu Bodhi's translation, and Chetasika Chitta combination according to Venerable Sayadaw U Silananda. So based on the classification of the enumeration of the mental factors, we could find the consciousness, associated consciousness, and also dissociated consciousness for all 52 mental factors. And also, we have learned about their nature and how they arise with the respective consciousness separately or in combination, of occasionally, or always. How they arise. We already studied about the moods of mental factors too. Okay, so I'm going to stop here, my explanation, and we will continue if you have a question in Q&A session. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Thank you, Bante, for your teachings. Okay, this first question, Bante. Virati, since sense, fear, beautiful, functional chetas do not associate with virati, why does Arahanta Pala Chitta does associate with virati? Thank you, Bante. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
Okay, okay. That is the different nature. At the moment, Arahata Pala, not only Arahata Pala, all the supramundane chitta, they need to eradicate the defilement. So according to their nature, they need to eradicate the defilement. So eradication of defilement, there, the abstinence, the nature of abstinence is one of the functions to eradicate the defilements. Because as long as the defilements as long as one has the defilement, he has the potential to make the transgression. That is why for the Mega and Phala, supramundane consciousness, including the Arahata Phala Chitta, they need the function of virati. Then after the arising of the Arahata Phala, so Arahata Mega and Phala, there's no more wholesome and unwholesome in the Arahat's nature, in the Arahat's process. Instead of the wholesome nature, wholesome consciousness, the functional consciousness take place. For the functional consciousness, it does not need to make the eradication or to make the abstraction, because at the moment of Arahata, Mega, and Phala, all the defilements, which is the cause of the transgression, are removed completely. That is why for the Arahat already removed the tendency of the transgression, and there's no more opportunity to arise the abstinence. So that is why, because the nature of virati is deliberately or intentionally abstaining. Because in the Arahat's nature, all the underlying causes and conditions are removed. So Arahat does not need intentionally abstinence. That is why in the functional consciousness, the virati cannot arise.
So next question. One dummy Bante about Karuna and Mudita. When a person take object to enter first up to 4th jhana level, What object are they taking to make karuna and mudita arise? Thank you, Bante. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
Okay, so here the jhana up to the fourth jhana level, this is with the karuna and mudita. So we can understand the jhana with the karuna and without with the karuna or mudita, or without the karuna or mudita. It can be different. So the jhana karuna with the karuna mean the jhana is developed focusing on the beings. So being with suffering, focusing on that beings, the development of the karuna can lead to the lead the concentration up to the jhana level. So a meditator practice that meditation. He takes his objects of the beings in suffering. Then he trying to develop his concentration up to the jhana level. That types of jhana is the jhana together with arise with the karuna. In the same way, one focusing on the beings in pleasing, so the being in happiness, focusing on that object, he develop his concentration up to the jhana level. That is the jhana up to the fourth jhana. So that is the jhana with the appreciated joint. So sometimes the other meditators or that meditators can develop his jhana not focusing on that types of beings, these two types of beings, and focusing on the other objects. There are so many objects in the meditation, so for the samatha meditation. So for example, the focusing on the breathing or in breathe and out breath in that way. So focusing on that, when he developed his concentration up to the jhana level, his mind focused on the counterpart side. So the other consciousness not taking, not taking the beings in suffering and beings in pleasing, also can be up to the jhana level. Here the meditator practice his meditation on the beings in suffering, that there is the karuna, so the confession meditation with the jhana, and taking the object of beings in pleasing, that is the practice of meditation in mudita. So jhana also in the same way. So the other objects are like a breathing and kasina and false, like the asupa, like this. So other meditation subject, so in the counterpart sign, the level of counterpart sign can be the object of other jhanas. Okay.
Thank you, Bante. The next questions. Dear Bante, could Bante explain further about the function of faith, Saddha? To clarify, as a water clearing jam causes muddy water to become clear, or its function is to set forth as one might set forth to cross a flood. Is blind faith considered a faith? How should one set their faith on their path in learning the Buddha's teachings and on their teacher? Thank you, Bante. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
Okay, about the faith, so you read the explanation or the complete explanation from the comprehensive manual of Abhidhamma. It includes the function and manifestation and proximate cause too. So, but usually we focus on the characteristic. So it is better if you read all of them. Okay, so about the saddha, the clarifying, similar to the gems, water clearing gems. So when the water clearing gem is put into the water, or the muddy water change to the clear water. In the same way, when the faith, Saddha, arises in the mental process, it makes the other mental factors and the consciousness clear. So when the mental factors clear, the consciousness also clear. So it make the faith, make the consciousness, the mental factors, associated mental factors to be clear, like the gem, like the water clearing gem. So that is his characteristic. So whenever the faith is present, the consciousness and mental factors are affected by that function, that characteristic of the faith. Then when you know the function, we can explain that related to the triple gem. So Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha. So when you develop focusing on the virtues of the triple gems, and when your mind, and when the Saddha, faith arises in your mind, it becomes clear, and your mind and associated mental factor of the feeling becomes clear, like this. And also keeping the confidence about the karma and its result, and you are making your understanding with the clear view. That is the work of the faith about the karma and its result. So this is the work of the Saddha, and here it mentioned it function to set forth. So it's going forward. The faith can clarify the mental factors and consciousness itself, and also it can force you to go forward in the good deeds, in the performing the wholesome. So here, as one might set forth to cross the flood. So here in the sutta, it mentioned that Saddhaya Tarati organ. So by the power of the faith, one can cross the flood of samsara. So by the power of the faith, you can keep going. Now one can keep going, practicing and devoting in the religious practice. That is why Saddha, the function of Saddha is forcing to keep going, to be keep going. So then the blind faith is not considered as the faith. So blind faith is, not doing properly, because the faith in the Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha is understanding with the how to say, the nature, able to focus on the virtue, the qualification of the Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha, the goodness, and also understanding the nature of the karma and its result in that way. And in the practice, how meaningful of the practice, that is the real Saddha, the authentic Saddha. And the blind faith is not like that, not knowing anything, just making the faith. So the blind faith is under the delusion, so ignorance. That is why the blind faith is considered as the unwholesome, is not always correct. So here, I don't know exactly what can be in the blind faith. Actually, in the blind faith, according to my understanding, it works the moha. Moha is working, it is function in the blind faith, because not knowing, not understanding any proper things, and make the faith and cling to that. That is blind faith. So blind faith is not same as the Saddha, the function of Saddha. That's why by the blind faith, we cannot cross the floods of the samsara. It can go wrong way any times. Then, okay, how should one set their faith in learning Buddha Dhamma Sangha? So this is a very good question. We are now learning the Buddha's teaching, and how we can set forth, we can keep our study and our practice. Actually, Buddha Dhamma, the teaching, a practical teaching. So to symbolize of the Buddha Dhamma, there are only 3 types of training. So the training of morality, the training of concentration, and the training of wisdom. Then not only just learning and discussion and arguing or fighting according to the philosophical point of view. For the practical point of view, we can follow the morality, training of morality. So the Buddha teach in that way to do good and to abstain from wrongdoings. And we need to apply ourselves into the Dhamma. So if we apply ourselves into the Dhamma, when we learn one, and then we can apply into that Dhamma. By the power of that practice, we can keep going, learning, and also practice at the same time. Whatever we know, Buddha's teaching, and we practice. So in this way, and moral training, concentration training, and also when you learn how to practice the concentration training, and you can develop in your daily life, but not putting aside them for the later, for the future. I will do it after retires or something else. And if you keep aside that make you confusion sometimes, and then you cannot keep going. Too much information and no practice. So it is better to keep our way in the practice and learning together. Whatever we know is to practice. In this way, we can keep our faith because it related to the practical aspects. And otherwise, later, keeping too much information and no practice and cannot feel any advantage, then that faith is going down. And so we need to keep the faith and wisdom, faith and knowledge in balance. Okay.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Okay. The next question. Dear Bante, why is it metta is not included in the eliminatable Appamana Cetasika? Thank you, Bante. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
Okay, so the metta, the ultimate reality, or the essence of ultimate reality, when we say the wa and something, it must be ultimate reality itself, or otherwise we need to find what is the ultimate reality. So here the wa metta represents one of the function of adosa, which is included in the beautiful universal 19. So adosa and metta are the same in the essence of ultimate reality. Metta refers to the function of adosa. And according to the practice, it can be appamanya, because as I mentioned in the lesson 22, or lesson 21, there the metta, there are 4 appamanya. So metta, karuna, mudita, and upekha. So only 2 of the karuna and mudita are counted in the enumeration of mental fetters, because they are separate mental fetters. The separate mental fetters. Here, metta is adosa, and here upekha, equanimity, is tatara majatata. That is why not only metta, the upekha also not included in the appamanya, because they are not separate mental factors from adosa and tatara machatata. So for the metta, we already notice the adosa in the enumeration of mental factors, and for the upekha, we already notice in the tatara machatata. So this is the reason why the metta is not included in the illimitable chitasika, but still illimitable practice. Okay.
Thank you, Bante. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. And the last question is, greetings, Bante. Buddha says Chaitana evolution through speech, bodily, and mind is karma. Then what is the function of Chaitana, Chaitasika in resultant and functional consciousness? Thank you, Bante. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
Okay, so the Chaitana in the here, good and bad. So pollution through speech, bodily, and mind. So in case of wholesome and unwholesome, the Chaitana has the ethics karmically active form because it gets the support of the defilements and clinging, and kilesa and upadana. And in case of the functional consciousness, there's no more support of the defilements and clinging. So it cannot be the form of karma. It cannot be karma because there's no support of the clinging and mental defilements. Then in case of resultant, so when the Chaitana arises with the resultants, if the resultant itself is the result of the wholesome and unwholesome karma, so it does not have the active function in the resultant consciousness. That is why the pollution arises with the functional consciousness and resultant consciousness are not counted in the karma because, and also they don't have the potency of the karma, karmically potency. So only the Chaitana pollution with the wholesome and unwholesome are counted as the karma. They can perform the function of karma. Okay.
Dear Bante, which mental factor is gratitude classified under? Thank you. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
How do you understand the Cynthia? The gratitude.
Yeah, gratitude is under which mental factors, I suppose.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. The gratitude. Okay, gratitude is one of the good attitude, understanding others good action towards oneself, and so that is good attitude. We cannot say their gratitude itself is for a single mental factor. It is gratitude. In the gratitude, there must be that is the how to say the wholesome consciousness and functional consciousness, because the ordinary person and trainees, if they understand the others good deeds towards them, at that time this understanding is the proper way, is the attitude is proper attitude. That is why that must be wholesome function. So the wholesome consciousness arises by that attitude, and there's no specific mental factors to represent the gratitude. But at that moment, with the form of gratitude, the wholesome consciousness arises. Sometimes the arahat is like a Venerable Sariputta, they pay for the other's good deal. At that time, the minds, the process arise in the form of knowing the gratitude of the others. At that time, the functional consciousness arises. So the gratitude is not the specific mental factors, but it is a good attitude composing the beautiful mental factors.
Thank you, Bante. And may Bante lead us in making aspiration and sharing and merits.
Okay, so let's make aspiration and let's share our merit. Repeat after me, please. Imina punya kamina.
Imina punya kamena.
Mami bala samagamo.
Mami bala samagamo.
Sadam samagamo hodu.
Satang samagamo hotu.
Yawa nibbana patiya.
Yawa nibbana patiya.
Idame punyam.
Idame punyang.
Asawakaya vaha hodu.
Asawakayang wahang hotu.
Idame punyam.
Idame punyang.
Nibbana sapajayo hodu.
Nibbana sa pacayo hotu.
Mama punya bhagam.
Mama punya bagang.
Sabha satanam bhajemi.
Sabha satanang pajemi.
E sabbe.
Te sape.
Me samam.
Me samang.
Punya bhagam labandu.
Punya bagang labantu. Sādhu, Sādhu, Sādhu. Okay. Thank you, Bante, very much for your time and also everyone's for your participation. Till we meet next week, may all be well and happy. Sādhu, Sādhu, Sādhu.